सही। अच्छा, अगर जो लोग छुपे हुए हैं, they can turn on their videos और आप अपनी खूबसूरत चेहरों का दीदार करवा सकते हैं तो that would be great. And I would like to start on time. It's 10:01 already. So PW checking and everything that comes with it uh, is why we're here. Uh, Part of trying to make PWs or PW checking a little easier, a little less taxing on the mind is to give you certain parameters within which you can check those PWs. So hopefully that is very helpful. Areej, you had something to add? So I'm just getting some messages. ठीक है. अच्छा, so the first thing that we're going to do is start by checking a PW. I know that you'll be saying, lekin it's very important to get a baseline before we move forward and actually see the effect of using a rubric, right? So what we're going to do is I'm just going to, in the chat, share a link with some instructions. So you just click on the link, it'll take you to a PDF resume. All you have to do is check the resume and grade it out of 8 and keep that grading with you. In a second, I will ask you to submit that grading in a different form and then we'll take it from there. Okay, you guys have 5 minutes to check this resume and then grade it. Okay, so your time starts now and 10:07 a.m. We'll continue. You guys can all access the resume, right? If anyone's having trouble accessing, please let me know. For the new people joining in and wondering what's going on, we've just shared a resume with everyone. They're checking it. You're supposed to check it and give it a grade out of 8. I'll just share it again. Uh, Please check it ASAP and finalize a grade for this resume. Let me know when you're done. Okay, we have a few people who have completed the checking, and so you must have your grade with you. I'm just going to share a link, and it takes you to a Google form, and all you have to do is submit the grade that you've given on the Google form. Okay, it's a very simple form. It just collects your email, and there's a drop down menu. So whenever you're done checking, submit your results there. Okay, are you guys done? Fit as. So everyone who can, please turn on your videos. It really helps when you're not looking at a bunch of letters and pictures. I'm getting literally no feedback from the other end. Sahi. So great. You guys just checked the resume and you submitted a grade. We'll be looking into it in a second. But before we get into it, the question that I'm going to ask, that I'm going to pose, and you guys can raise your hand to answer, is what do you think a rubric is, and what does it mean? What does it do? So, yeah, raise your hands if you have the answer. You can also throw your answer in the chat box.
Can you please repeat the question? Okay, so.
Yes, Amal. Thank you. Please. Amna, you were responding to the question?
No. I couldn't hear what you had asked, so I was just asking.
The question is, what's a rubric, and like, what does it mean? What does it do? Rabia
Can I answer this question? Okay, sure. So a rubric is an evaluation tool which is used to assess the quality of responses, or in other words, just a grading criteria for a piece of work.
Okay, so it's something to compare your whatever you're checking against, and when you're grading it. So that's what it is. A very accurate description of what it is. And so, acha, if that's what a rubric is, then like, uska fayda kya? What's the benefit? Why even use a rubric? I mean, you just check the resumes, right? And clearly you're capable of checking the resumes on your own. Then why do we need a rubric to do that? Because if you could just respond to that.
I think we need a rubric ताकि उसके अंदर से जो subjective part है हम सबके biases जो है उसको minimize किया जाए. Of course we can't eradicate it, but we can minimize it. So it's a set benchmark.
Great, thank you, Vikas. So basically, remove the subjectivity from within the rubric or the checking process or the result. What does that do? What does removing subjectivity do as a result of removing subjectivity? Tanya, you want to respond to
that? So I would add to the point that Vikas said about removing subjectivity. I think rubrics also help maintain consistency within your own criteria as well. So because when you have to check around 70 things, और एक आपने सुबह अच्छी मूड में की थी और एक रात को गंदे मूड में कर रहे हैं, so I think having a rubric helps with that. And I'm sorry, what was the second question? It was about removing subjectivity, right? How it helps. Yeah. So I think I kind of answered that only because a lot of your corrections, I feel it depends a lot on your circumstances, your mood, your energy levels. So in order not to let that affect a lot, it helps a lot when you have set check marks. Okay, acha, this is what I'm the evaluating criteria. or how I had graded it previous year, या सुबह को उसको क्या था या किसी और grade को same चीज आप check कर रहे थे. So I think a rubrics with a set check mark list, like I start, like it's kind of like a self check for yourself rather than just अगर जैसे we are जितने भी हम program managers हैं, एक तो उसकी consistency के लिए, and then with your personal consistency as well, the rubrics help.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Danya. And so that's exactly what it does, right? So if you have something to compare against, what you basically is doing in the end is, as Danya said, and as Amna says, coherence, and Ian said, lets you be fair. So it takes away, and it may sound, wrong, but it takes away the human element out of it, and it lets you just focus on what needs to be graded, right? And as Dania mentioned, it takes the things around, like what's your mental state at the moment, like it takes out what day of the, like what time of the day you're doing the checking out of it, and as a result of it you get coherence within the graded results that you get out of whatever you're checking. So that's one benefit of using a rubric. What is another benefit? And that's something that no one's touched abhi tak. Abu Zar, you said something in the chat, and you want to elaborate on that?
So I stated that students are kind of satisfied and they can assess in which areas they are already good at and in which areas they need to work on. And you, as instructor, have, तो आपको फिर कम बच्चे आपको office hours में तंग करते हैं when you share a rubric with them. Otherwise, people just came in with their assessments right after you have graded के sir मैंने तो बहुत कुछ सही किया है लेकिन you have मेरे आपने यहाँ पे marks deduct कर लिए हैं, लेकिन when you give them a rubric, they do have think which areas they are already good at and which areas they can work.
Yeah, great, thank you, Abu Zar. And so that is the second benefit of using a rubric. It gives your audience, your students, a clear, a pathway in how to make improvements on their grades. So if they have, for example, a 6 out of 8 on their resume, a rubric will let them know what they can do exactly to get a 7 and what they can do exactly to get an 8. That's on the student side, right? So what's the third benefit? And it's related to this, but like it's more towards on your end, like while you're checking. There's a third benefit to it as well. And if you like a few responses on that, Amna, you have.
I think it sort of develops not just consistency, but also make sure that you're not, using some sort of just a higher set biases. And I also thought, I think like it's on the other end of what the students, because you can justify to the students that they have a rubric, but you can also justify to yourself that this is a set criteria and one should not like get out of this in order to sort of, assimilate every person in the batch and every batch in the cohort. So I think it could be something like that.
Right, exactly. So removing biases and giving you a chance to like clearly demarcate what exactly went into the grading. Like if somebody contests the score, you know exactly what to tell them in terms of Kecha, this was the criteria and this is where you fell and how you did. And again, related to this, the third benefit, if someone wants to take a stab at it still, what does the rubric have that lets you do this? What does a rubric have that lets you do this in terms of grading, like clearly demarcated results and all of that? Something related to that. Just like hovering around the answer now. Hamari policy hai of grading. This is okay. Yes, that's not so. That's a one way to put it. Cheek. I'll just answer it myself. So the last benefit of having a rubric is yes. Fatima Tariq has raised her hand. Yes, please, thank you.
I was just typing my answer, but what I think that the rubric benefits us in a way is that it lets us know what to look for, and it just cuts down unnecessary space when you're checking. There's so many PWs, and sometimes fellows have different kind of responses. So having a guideline helps us. Once you've gone back and forth with the rubric and the PW a few times, you've gotten that hang. And as you keep checking them, it's very easy for you to know what to look for exactly, and it just cuts down the chase for you. Otherwise, if you don't have that guideline, it takes, I think, more time to figure out what grade to give that student. So yeah, I think it reduces your mental load.
Yes, exactly. So we've all talked about how the rubric helps grading, and as a result, it standardizes the grade and all of that. But one thing that the rubric does is tell you what you need to grade. And yes, one of the side benefits of that is it takes the mental load off of you. Okay, acha, you're looking at a document with a complete open mind. You can literally check anything out of it. It could be the grammar, it could be spelling, it could be the structure. Is the story good? Is the reflection answering a couple of questions that were asked in the questions? So like, what exactly do you want to grade while you're checking a PW? A rubric helps you decide on what to grade within that. And so it takes the mental load off of you on कि अच्छा मैंने क्या करना है, and just defines everything for you in terms of what needs to be checked. So those are just like some benefits and uses and the reasons why we use rubric. At this point, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and ask. Otherwise, we can move on to the next bit. We're going to try and end this within the next half hour or so that we can leave you all to your busy schedules. Any questions? Great. Acha, so what we're going to do now is just going to give you an example, show you an example of a rubric, and within it, the different elements that make it work. So I'm just going to share my screen, and when I share my screen, I'm not exactly going to be able to see all of you. So feel free to raise your hand so that you get prioritized in this little box to my right. Khair, acha. So when you're sitting down to check a PW, the first thing that you need to answer is, acha, what was the purpose of sending this project work out exactly, like in the first place, right? And why is this project work given to the students? And that is basically what an evaluation objective is. So every project work that goes out, any assessment for that matter, any assessment, any assignment or any homework or anything like that, the reason why it's being given is going to be the evaluation objective of that assessment. Basically, the question is, as a result of doing this assessment or as a result of doing this assignment, what is it exactly that the students are going to be learning? And so that's the evaluation objective. So for this particular rubric, this is the resume rubric, because the example that was given to you in the beginning was a resume, just for consistency's purpose. The first evaluation objective within this rubric is application. And by application, you mean application of the tips that were shared with the students in the online course. So that's one evaluation objective. And the other one is editing. That's more to do with the look and feel and the finished product at the end of the day, right? So those are the evaluation objectives. So now you've identified the evaluation objective. That means you've identified what exactly you need to be looking out for when you're checking the resume. You need to now define, acha, what is, like, how you're going to be grading this evaluation objective. How do you define a 4? How do you define a 3 or a 2 or a 1 within that? And that's where the criteria, the metric and the criteria come, right? So the metric, as the word suggests, is what you're trying to measure, and criteria is the thing that you're going to be comparing it against to measure said metric. And at any point, if I'm losing you guys, just raise your hand and let me know, and I'll explain again. So for example, in this particular rubric, in the application evaluation objective, the metric is the 4 steps that was shared with the students. And therefore, the criteria in relation to that metric is the 4 steps. The descriptions are on point. Action verbs have been used. Quantification of the descriptions, and the last one is the use of summary skills. So these are the 4 things that you're looking for in a resume when you're checking for application of the points that you were looking for. If you come across a resume that has all of these things in perfection, like none of the descriptions were long and too elaborate. There were three sentences like long or something like that. Then and all the descriptions you started with an appropriate action verb. All of the descriptions were clear. They mentioned the impact, they quantified things, and there was at least three summary skills used. Then you will score that resume a 5 in application, a 5 out of 5 in application. And that's how you're sort of comparing the resume with the criteria in order to do the scoring. If like while checking, you come across a resume that had all the descriptions short and to the point, but like only most of them, those descriptions start with an appropriate action word. There are some descriptions like 2, 3, and यहाँ पे थोड़ी सी subjectivity है, it can be up to you. But like 2, 3, 4, if there was a total of 10 descriptions, most would be 6. So most of them have good, action verbs used. Then they fall under this criteria level, and you will score them either 3 or 4 depending on how many descriptions were wrong or didn't fit the criteria. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Or are there questions? Any concerns? Fit है. So ये हो गया. And then editing के वक्त, like when you're just looking at the general look and feel of the resume itself, you can see if everything is aligned or not, if the punctuation is appropriate, everything is where it's supposed to be. And if it's not, if everything's all there, Times New Roman size 12, yeah, Arial size 12 used, yeah, or any other professional font, please. Comic Sans is not a professional font. You'd be surprised how many resumes we receive in Comic Sans. It's very, it doesn't give a good impression. So if all of those criteria are met, then you will grade them 3. So for example, in this particular case, the category or the evaluation objective has been divided into 2 different metrics, and you're sort of comparing both of these at the same time with the resume. So it's one thing around punctuation and the other one around the overall structure of the resume itself. If everything's perfect, you give them a 3. If there are issues like 1 or 2 mistakes here and there, you give them a 2. If there are any more issues, you give them a 1. Too many, and it's describing how many is too many. Anything more than 3 or 2 punctuation or spelling mistakes, anything more than 3 areas of mistake in the alignment and all of that stuff gives you a 0. So that's on the if you have multiple criteria that you're comparing it against. Any questions? Okay, perfect. Qazi, do you want to share the example and take it from here?
Yes. Okay. I will share it. Sure. So what we'll do is that we'll go through an activity right now, and we'll create a resume based on the rubric that Faisal just shared. And share my screen. Okay. Is everyone able to see the resume?
Yes, sir.
Okie dokie. So this is the resume of one Ikra Shahbaz, and we'll go through both the evaluation objectives. But first, we will look at the first evaluation objective. तो पहला evaluation objective क्या था from the rubric, if anybody remembers?
4 steps.
Yes, application of the 4 steps. बिल्कुल बिल्कुल आपने सही कहा, thank you Anas. तो यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हैं again we were marking it 5 out of 8 for the application. और एप्लीकेशन में 4 स्टेप्स थे that जो जितनी भी डिस्क्रिप्शंस हैं वो शॉर्ट हैं, कंसाइज हैं, स्पेसिफिक हैं, समरी स्किल्स इस्तेमाल हो रही हैं and they're starting with action verbs which are relevant. Okay, now going through the resume you can see that this particular fellow has done overall a good job of this because she has used summary skills, she has made sure that everything is kept short. कुछ जगहों पे हाँ जैसे for example in forecasting and price planning she has not started with an action verb, she started with a very basic सा sentence के we found that if okay flower mills. So एक mistake तो यहाँ पे हो गई है which means that Excelsior वाला part नहीं है because that specifically states के all of them have to be starting with an action word. ठीक है, so we can tell that she probably won't get a 5 here. And similarly, in certain areas as well, you can mention कि quantification शायद कुछ जगहों पे नहीं हुई थी, जिस तरह in Siddhar Family Packages Limited, we don't see a lot of quantification, but we do see it over here in the forecasting and price planning. We also see it in this extracurricular and volunteer experience as well, right? And similarly, for every place, जितनी भी उन्होंने दी हुई है, most of them have quantification, most of it has summary skills, most of it starts with an action word. So automatically we will see that in the application 3 to 4 के अंदर अगर आप जाएं, so we will be grading her at a higher 4 over here because most of it is pretty good, right? So does everybody agree on that? या किसी को लगता है कि नहीं 2 दे दें इसको या 1 दे दें या 3 दे दें? नहीं, अच्छा ठीक है, so we're all on the same page, right? And because of these reasons that I mentioned, now let's so हमने ये define कर लिया कि out of 5 she's getting a 4 in application. Now the editing part is left. Editing के total marks 3 हैं. Now does she deserve a 3? The 3 is in Excelsior, which means that it's completely flawless, it's perfect. Does she deserve a 3? And I will ask, just give me 1 second, I will ask Samaya if she deserves a 3 or not.
I think alignment is a little out. जो वो जहाँ पे cities और Pakistan लिखा हुआ है, that's not in line. And I think there should be a space after 2013 to 2017. So alignment is a little out. और जो वो points हैं, that's also they should be aligned एक ही जगह पे. That's also something जो इसको करना चाहिए.
Okay. कौन से वाले points?
जैसे जो project title है, इसमें she hasn't made a pointer.
हाँ, इधर forecasting के लिए.
Forecasting में और जो ऊपर वाले भी हैं, I think they're not aligned. I'm not sure कि बाकी हैं कि नहीं because this is.
ये भी देख लेते हैं नीचे. यहाँ पे सही है in this part extracurricular से नीचे.
हाँ यार ठीक है.
ठीक है. So how many alignment issues can you find here in total?
Alignment issue I think ये जो cities का है, ये एक है और ऊपर space missing है क्या? उसके
yeah बिल्कुल सही. So you can see that यहाँ पे भी this particular thing is जो margin से पहले आ रही है ये इधर हुई भी है, ये इधर दो तो issues यहीं पे हो गए. And as far as the alignment is concerned, otherwise it seems to be fine. हाँ कुछ issues हैं bullet points के, but there are about 1 to 2 issues in terms of alignment. So in this case, again, we can see that she's not going to get the total of 3 marks here because there are issues. इसके साथ साथ we are also talking about punctuation and grammar. Grammar की कोई mistakes नजर नहीं आ रही as such. हाँ ये आप कह सकते हैं monthly, quarterly के जो capitalize किया हुआ है, I don't think they need to be capitalized. Similarly, if we talk about punctuation, problem solving के बाद एक space होनी चाहिए, full stop के बाद space नहीं है. So some of these issues, but not too much, right? So we've said, let me just stop screen share for 1 second. And let me bring up the rubric. Can everybody see the rubric?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we know that she's not getting an Excelsior. So the thing at the end is K 3, ya to she's either getting a top level or she's getting this over here. Ab iske andar, how do we define which one should we give her? So if we look at, if you give her 1 point out of 3, it means that alignment 3 से ज़्यादा places में नहीं है, margins appropriate और consistent बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, font type भी consistent नहीं है, inappropriate font type है, more than 2 punctuation है और largely ignores grammatical conventions. Is this true for the resume that you just saw? And for that, I will ask. सबने videos off की नहीं है, मुझे उनके नाम ही नजर आ रहे हैं. Let me ask Saim. Saim, do you think that Ikra Shehbaz should get a 1 in this category?
No, I think that's too low.
And why is it too low?
Because alignment की mistakes हैं एक दो जगह, लेकिन इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं, I think. मतलब she can improve. अच्छा, one thing that I noticed more कि मतलब उन्होंने headings जो हैं वो full capital में लिखी हुई हैं, लेकिन एक जगह उन्होंने मतलब वो normal sentence case में लिखी हुई हैं. One mistake.
Okay, ठीक है, हाँ वो भी थी एक चीज़ है. So then, judging by the resume, then what should she get in this particular evaluation objective, which is editing? Let me stop and share her resume again. I'm sorry, I have to constantly go back and forth. Anyone would like to answer? Uswa, perhaps. Rizwan.
So there are few mistakes in the formatting, लेकिन उतना ज़्यादा खराब नहीं है.
बिल्कुल.
अगर टोटल 3 मार्क्स हैं फॉर्मेटिंग के, तो हम शायद 2 दे सकते हैं या 1.5 दे सकते हैं. 1 तो नहीं सकते.
Yeah, बिल्कुल. So does everybody agree that she should be getting 2 marks here out of 3? And we've discussed why. Because 1 means कि बहुत ज़्यादा मसले हैं, 3 means कि flawless है, but we've seen through the resume that that's not the case. So she is definitely going to get 2 here, right? So फिर total marks कितने हो गए? 4 हमने दिए उसके, और फिर 2 हम 4 दिए application के, और 2 हमने दिए editing के. तो total marks हो गए 6, right? 6 out of 8. Okay, so this resume gets a 6 out of 8. Now, just through going through the resume, does it look and feel like a 6 out of 8, even if we had not shared the resume with you? अगर आपको वैसे कहा जाता कि इसको मार्क करें बगैर resume के, तो would you think that it would be a 6 out of 8? 5.5 out of 8. अच्छा, अभी इसमें चले जाएं 5.25, 5.37. आखिर कोई मसला नहीं है, कर सकते हैं. 6, yes. हाँ 6 है, ठीक है, बिल्कुल सही है. तो वैसे भी देख के भी 6 लग रहा है. So this is how you are supposed to check a piece of work against a rubric, and it's very easy if you can first identify कि Excelsior में कितना आ रहा है और not there yet में कितना आ रहा है, and then it's very easy to identify. So generally you're being too generous. कौन 5.5 वाली बात पे आपकी? अच्छा सही है. ये अब resume के अंदर हम किसी और चीज़ों में पढ़ गए हैं. Headshots are preferred or not. Some people like them, some people don't like them. But anyway, coming back to the point that this is how you're supposed to do it. And ये सिर्फ resume के लिए नहीं है. It's also true for any other project work that you receive. And again, the point that we're trying to make is that everybody is on the same page regarding this. Yes, there are certain ranges between points. जिस तरह application के अंदर there was a range 3 to 4. So उसमें आप देख सकते हैं कि अगर ज़्यादा थोड़े से issues आ रहे हैं, then you can grade it a low 3. So वो 3 हो जाएगा. या फिर जैसे हमने इस particular example में देखा, इतने ज़्यादा glaringly obvious नहीं थे issues, so we were still grading it high category के अंदर, which was top level, which was a 4. Okay, so Ikra को 6 मिले out of 8, which means that she will probably be called for an interview, and that's good. ठीक है. And one important thing, Sir Rizal, do you want to add something?
Yeah, so वो headshot वाला जो question chat box में discuss हो रहा है, I just wanted to address that. It's a very interesting question, right? So, should a headshot be there, or should it not be there? Will you be deducting marks, or should you be deducting marks for a headshot? And once again, just look at the rubric. If you see, like, rubric and the headshot is not a defined criteria for anything, right? And so, it being there or it not being there shouldn't matter in terms of checking or giving marks. So इस तरह का कोई भी चीज अगर आपके आता है ना, like it's gonna happen, like resume is not the only PW that goes out. You're gonna be checking cover letters and other reflective posts. Any PW that you're checking and you feel that this is something that's there and should you be grading it or not, just refer back to the rubric and see if that's a defined criteria, and if it is, then you can grade it. If it's not, then you can leave it. That's much it. If the headshot is just like terrible and like it's completely misaligned, then वो alignment की criteria, formatting की criteria fall करेगा. Then that's, you can deduct marks for that. So just refer to the rubric and see if it makes sense. Pass it back to you.
Thank you. Any questions in this entire activity? दो चीजें which we would like to encourage you to do is that the descriptors are there to help you give feedback. So we've kind of use those to give feedback as well. So if you're giving Ikra, for example, 6, you can mention ke ye issues the, you can take them straight out of the descriptors. We've also added the grading criteria and the PWs so that fellows also know कि उनसे क्या expectations हैं. And again, thank you to Rabia for pointing that out. And एक और चीज हम लोगों ने वो जो categories हैं Excelsior, top level, encouragement to improve, not there yet, वो इसलिए डाली हैं ताकि you can also use those when you're grading. So rather than telling somebody कि आपका 0 आया है 8 में से, आप उनको लिख दें not there yet, which was something that I believe Ali was also talking about in a meeting. And that kind of makes it more easier to digest for fellows rather than उनको पता चले कि हम तो fail हो गए. And we want to make it a little more positive कि कुछ नहीं होता, it's fine. Wajiha पूछ रही है, what if we don't agree with the grading criteria? Wajiha, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
What if I think that you guys have, what if I don't agree with the grading criteria that is mentioned in the rubrics? What if I want to do, I think that grammar या उसकी ज़्यादा penalize करना चाहिए errors को?
ये अच्छा सवाल है. What we try to do is कि हम लोगों ने जो शुरू वाले PWs हैं उसमें grammar को इतना ज़्यादा penalize हम नहीं कर रहे, बहुत थोड़े points रखे हुए हैं. But
that's
as
just
we
an
progress,
example. Grammar की बात is just an example. I'm just saying कि अगर what if I think कि grading थोड़ा different होना चाहिए और मुझे लग रहा है कि maybe the rubrics, the criteria that is mentioned by you guys is a little too generous, और इससे इतनी learning नहीं होगी if we start handing out marks to them.
I think that it's good that you can get in touch with us and communicate with us कि what is the reason behind it. उसकी वजह ये है कि अगर आप let's suppose अपने batch के लिए वो apply कर देती हैं उस rubric को which you have in mind, it's then not going to be standardized with the other batches, right? And फिर वही मसला आ जाएगा कि the point of using the rubric is to make sure कि एक sort of standardize है. So why don't you share with us if ये किसी के लिए भी है, by the way, if you disagree with the grading criteria, if you feel like इसका objective different होना चाहिए, इसकी marking different होना चाहिए, discuss it with us, provide us with reasoning, and we can consider changing it. The reason why we don't want grammar to be too much penalized is because we know that the fellows, they don't have a very good grasp over written communication. So अगर हम 8 में से 5 marks grammar के रख देंगे तो फिर बहुत ज़्यादा लोग जो हैं वो not there yet वाली category में आ जाएंगे. So we also have to think from that viewpoint as well. Just an example once again. So
but we know, sorry to cut you, we know that employers won't know that कि इस बच्चे की grammar इतनी अच्छी नहीं है because of the background that they're coming from. They're not going to discriminate. They're not going to see कौन किस university से आ रहा है. वो तो एक ही criteria पे उसको करेंगे. तो I think we need to be a little more strict on this ताकि so that our fellows have stand a greater chance of being called for interviews.
By the way, ये जो बात आप करी इसके लिए we have a procedure in place to remedy that. That's the resume quality check होता है इनके अंदर. So वो इसीलिए किया गया है. The marking is a little more strict as well. So we'll talk about that because it's not really related to this part. But just to answer your question, we do consider that because resume is a very important thing. और उसके लिए एक separate quality check है और उसकी grading हाँ थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा strict है. It also happens after the resume has gone through multiple rounds of feedback. So we expect there not to be a lot of punctuation or grammar mistakes. Or Baki, obviously you're the facilitator. If you feel like there is some additional feedback that can be given regarding grammar and punctuation, and you feel that this is a weak point of a particular student, you can point that out, obviously in an encouraging way. Okay, this needs to be worked upon because this is putting all of your other achievements usko spotlight nahi mil rahi because the other issues are so glaringly obvious here in that case. ठीक है? Or Baki, again, if there are any confusions regarding that, you can always bring them to us and we can see if it needs to be changed or not. Any other question or concern? Thank you for that, Vijaya. Yes, Fatima Tariq.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, maybe it would be great if you can share with us and even the new team members about the policy that was introduced last time about how the fellows graduation depends on the resume. So it's better so we know now that so that we can tell the fellows in that way and they take it a little more seriously and instead of following up with them later on again and again. So yeah, just so we know for clarity.
Okay, so last semester we incorporated a quality check for resumes and uska procedure ये होता है कि जो पहले resume submit होता है PW4 के अंदर, ठीक है, उस पे feedback मिलती है, then PW7 में they have to submit it again, update करके with the feedback. When they submit the resume, उसके बाद हम ये देखते हैं कि जितने बच्चे भी they're falling below the threshold that are वो not their category में हैं, तो उनके लिए फिर एक थर्ड राउंड होता है जिसके अंदर they're asked to submit their resumes again and then एक external वैसे होती internally है, बाहर नहीं होती, but the team doesn't do it. The other team members in the Amal team, एक dedicated team होती है, वो resumes फिर से check करते हैं for quality control. उसकी grading again ज़्यादा थोड़ी सी strict होती है, उसके भी इसी तरह के similar criteria होता है, look and feel, use of space होती है और फिर उसके अंदर grammar होता है, punctuation होती है, application होती है, I believe. And what is important is that if the fellows fail in any one of the categories, overall उनका resume fail हो जाएगा. So again, Vajiha, coming back to your point, like अगर वो grammar में भी fail कर जाते हैं, बाकी दोनों fit हैं, it's still an overall fail. Similarly, grammar fit है, look and feel fit है, editing बुरी है, फिर भी fail हो जाते हैं. So it's a little more strict. And then वो उनको बताया यही गया है कि if you fail in this particular spot check, then you will not be allowed to graduate. Because we've gone through so many successive rounds of feedback and it is not a good reflection of your participation or your hard work. So they're given one final extension जिसके अंदर they're asked to submit the resumes again and then the team decides whether it is still up to the mark और फिर team के पास इख्तियार होता है कि इनको graduate करना है या नहीं करना. So अगर आपको लग रहा है कि अभी भी ये fellow का resume improve नहीं हो रहा despite giving so much feedback, you can decide कि okay, this person is not going to graduate. So बस ये एक चीज है which we will be doing और ये इस दफा भी होगी and PW7 में again the updated resume will be going out. So in PW7 you will be asked to explain to the fellows कि okay, please make sure that आप लोग जो है इसको seriously ले रहे हैं क्योंकि इसकी बेस पे फिर आगे आपका जो resume final resume submission होगी वहां पे अगर आप fail हो गए तो then you will not be allowed to graduate. But obviously we will send that in more detail. उसकी communication है जरा proper किस्म की वो हम बाद में भेज देंगे. Thank you Fatima for bringing that out. Okay, so any other questions? सवाल किसी का, जवाब किसी का, कोई बात, confusion? नहीं, ठीक है. तो अब हम क्या करेंगे? What we will do is we will do another activity, very short, simple activity. It's very similar to the one we just did. We'll share with you the same resume again that we shared at the start, and again you will need to take 5 minutes और उसको आपने grade करना है. But this time around we will be giving you the rubric for it as well. So Sir Hisar has been kind enough to share it in the chat. The file is the same. 5 मिनट लें इसको grade कर दें and जो rubric है वो भी हम शेयर कर देते हैं। अच्छा, रूब्रिक भेज दिया, ठीक है। You can find the rubric if you open PW7 वाली टैब, उसके अंदर है। टेन 51 पे फिर हम इसको बंद कर देंगे, and then once you're done, just submit it in the form. 1 मिनट रह गया आपके पास.
Sure. So I think most of the people are done. And let me just very quickly share the results with you guys. So one of the benefits we talked about of using a rubric was greater consistency. And as you can see before we shared the rubric, even though most of you have been checking resumes for a while now and have been using the rubrics, there were some major inconsistencies. As you can see, like it ranges between 2 and 7, with the majority giving it a 5 or 6. And right now we have most people sharing like 4 and 5, with one person giving it a 1. I'll find out who this is. And yeah, so for the majority, I guess we can say that there is greater consistency within the results. And it also, I'm hoping, and I'll open the floor for some discussion here. I'm hoping that with the rubric, with the criteria defined, how was the experience of checking the resume? Was it, I don't know, easier? Was it more direct, less taxing on trying to figure out what to grade, what not to grade, less taxing in terms of weightage kya deni hai this cheez. So how was it before and after? Convenient and justified. Can you justify said answer, Hajra? Hajra, you wanna? What is justified? Justify using it? Was it like worth the effort? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, sir. I'm not sure if you were asking me. I didn't hear you initially. So I think it was justified in terms of reading through the description and figuring out कि अच्छा अगर ये चीज़ की है तो इसके इतने marks बनते हैं, ये range justified हो जाती है. So rather than me assuming कि अच्छा formatting ठीक लग रही है, could be better. No, I have the entire set of guidelines in front of me. मुझे पता है कि अच्छा जी ये range है और अगर ये चीज़ें मुझे नज़र आ रही हैं, so this fellow deserves this score. मैं खुद assume नहीं कर सकती कि जी अच्छा इसको इतने दे देते हैं. It has been justified according to the rubric.
Right. Excellent. Anybody else who thought कि अच्छा anybody who thought कि कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ा, that this was useless? One किसने दिया था? One वाला score वाला. I want to know the logic there. Like, what was the reasoning? Hand raised by Fatma. Yes. No hand raised. So hand raised.
No, I didn't give the 1. That was someone else. I just have.
Yeah. So like, what's yeah? You can share what you wanted to say in terms of the other question.
So I just wanted to ask, what I was confused about is that sometimes if, for example, when you look at editing or something, if a fellow is making the same mistake repeatedly, do you cut mark once, twice, or do you cut it every time they make the mistake? I think
some internet issues there. So actually a very valid question because of how common it is. You guys give the fellows a very specific feedback, and the next time they submit the resume or the cover letter, it has literally the exact same mistake, and so you have to give them the same feedback again. So I'm going to ask you guys, how do you handle this situation? Maybe some of the more experienced PMs can share, like, what do they do to make sure the feedback is actually incorporated. Iman, do you want to take a stab at it?
So what do I do when the resume is full of errors? Is that what you're saying?
I'm asking, like, so you gave, like, they submitted the resume, you gave them feedback, a set of feedback, and the second time they submit the resume, they have the same mistakes that you already gave them feedback on. What do you do in that case?
I give them lesser marks than the previous time and tell them that I won't be giving you feedback because you didn't incorporate the previous one. And please go through the one that was already given because it was quite detailed and it had quite literally a lot of comments and a lot of markers. And ठीक है, अगर कोई एक आधी mistake miss हो गई है उनसे, that's fine. I still flag that. But if it's quite literally the same mistakes over again, then I just don't give feedback. I just write a big comment about how they didn't and give close to a 0. Yeah.
Awesome. Rabia, you raised your hand and then quickly unraised it. Do you want to add something, Rabia?
I was going to say the same thing that Iman said, that generally I don't give them feedback again. I tell them that I'm not giving them feedback because they did not bother going it through the first time. Also, I do mark them stricter the second time, considering कि एक दफ़ा already उनको ये चीज़ें बता चुके हैं. Something else that I do as well, and you can tell me if this is okay to do. So if I don't agree with the rubric at some point, so for example, agree से मेरा ये मतलब है कि, like, so for example, if I've told them something specific कि आपने ये करना ही करना है, and then they don't end up doing it, so then I feel that is something that I should be deducting marks on. So for example, अभी picture की बात हो रही थी, so I'll just use that example कि if I specifically told them कि आपने अपनी selfies नहीं use करनी, and then they end up putting their selfies, so then I do deduct marks for that. So I end up adding that to my own, like, personal rubric in addition to the one that I'm already using.
Awesome, great. Thank you, Rabia. Saad?
Yeah, I just wanted to add another interesting way of sort of making sure कि वो incorporate कर रहे हैं, is कि जब आप उनको पहली दफ़ा feedback दे देते हो और they come back and they've not incorporated it, you automatically आपको पता चल जाता है कुछ लोगों का resume जो है वो is like on the top level, right? Like top level या बहुत अच्छा है, exceptional है. So you sort of make them resume leaders, right? And pair up people जो one की category में आ रहे हैं उनको उनके साथ pair कर दें. And they, क्योंकि accountability तब तक इतनी हमने sort of ingrain कर दी होती है कि वो एक दूसरे को बड़ा strictly क्या कहते हैं check में रख रहे होते हैं. So I did this in the first fellowship, it worked out. It worked out in the second fellowship as well कि जो resume leaders बन जाते हैं फिर वो they keep on checking on them, right? And they keep on making sure that they are incorporating all the changes. And then by the third time that you get it, they, like, there is a significant difference. So फिर उसके बाद जो उनको अगर आप feedback दो ना तो वो फिर भी they're a little more receptive to it. Yeah.
Awesome, that's great, Saad. Thank you for that. Anybody else have any ideas? You can also use so, like, yes, marks ज़्यादा deduct करने, like, be more stricter in terms of specifically the feedback you've already given. You can, not give the feedback again and ask them to read the previous one. So all of this is within the homework. You can also adopt other means of making sure that they understand the importance of incorporating feedback. Like, you give them just give them a call or send them a message on WhatsApp or voice note. Angrier voice note than a regular voice note, and that can hopefully do the job as well. So different ways of doing it. Saad, do you want to add something, or is that still the same hand raised? Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So we're on the dot 11 at the end of this workshop. If there are any questions, you can ask right now, and otherwise, good luck with the rest of the fellowship and all the PWs that follow. Hafiz, guys.
Hafiz.